Hey guys, Tim here, off of a week off from Idle, but I'm back. I missed you guys. I missed every single last one of you. Idle episode 6, today's topics, yes, topics with an S, topics plural, are going to be so interesting. I can't wait to talk about them. But before I dive into the topics, I just want to let you guys know that, I did take a week off. It was sudden, I know. But just dealing with some things, and sometimes you just need to detach, and just need to relax. I'll be a little bit more conscious about announcing that in the future for you guys, so that way, there isn't any confusion. In the meantime, I hope you guys caught up on all of the episodes of I'll Talk If You'll Listen. 5 episodes to listen to so far, and again, we're on Spreaker. We're on iTunes and we are on Stitcher. We are coming to Google Play. A buddy of mine, Marshall, who has his own podcast called The Legion of Love, which is pretty cool if you're into relationship, advice, interesting questions, the whole nine. Definitely check that out. Again, it's called The Legion of Love. Definitely something to look forward to. My buddy Marshall, he said, dude, Google Play. I'm like, oh, snap. Didn't even think about that. Google Play. I try to show love to the people who don't use the stock iPhone I podcast app, or the people who don't have an iPhone and they're listening on another device. I try to show, hey, got Stitcher, got Spreaker, and Spreaker is actually really cool to use, really easy to use, and apparently Stitcher is really, really popular. But I totally forgot about Google Play. And that's that iPhone bias for you. You're used to the Apple ecosystem, you kind of forget about the other outlets out there. And when I was doing research for my podcast, I was looking like, hey, oh, Stitcher and Spreaker, those are like, Spreaker's the web host, Stitcher is another outlet for the podcast. I'm set. And like, oh no, Google Play. Okay, I know I'm not big enough for Spotify or Tidal or anything like that yet. So, um, obviously, get in where you can fit in, right? And we're coming to Google Play soon. I'm going to look into that actually right after the recording of this episode. So this is episode 6, guys. 6 episodes in the books. This is the first episode of March, as we took the took last week off. First episode of March, and a lot to talk about, a lot to recap. And I hope you guys listened to last week's episode. Um, this whole episode won't be about last week, but I'm going to touch on some topics that we talked about last week, and I'm going to expand on those topics a little bit more. Also, huge surprise for you guys. I listen to you guys' feedback, and I want you guys to know, like, obviously, when you hear podcasts, whether they're big or small, right? You hear people say things like, "Oh, hey, I'm listening to my audience. I'm listening to you guys," or, "This is your show," yada yada yada. This is really definitely influenced by you guys. I mean, look at the show's title. I'll talk if you'll listen. If you're not listening, who am I talking to, right? So I listen to you guys, and I've gotten some great feedback. I've gotten feedback from constant views of the show. One in particular, my buddy Anthony. Anthony, he reached out to me. He's been a listener to the show, huge supporter of the show. Also has his own YouTube channel called The Nerd Coalition. Super cool guy. And he's like, dude, your show needs to be longer. It needs to be longer. So, I listened to you guys. I listened to everyone who had some feedback about the show being longer. And apparently 25 to 30 minutes is not enough for you guys, which is awesome news to me because it lets me know that you guys are listening when I am talking. And like the show suggests, I'll talk if you'll listen. So the show is going to be an hour or at least close to it long going forward. And I'm really excited about that. So thank you so much for the feedback, guys. And this will be the first episode where things will this will be the first episode where it'll be longer than the rest of the episodes. So last week, guys, I hope you're all caught up. We touched on some pretty, in some cases, sensitive topics for some of you. Ooh, I got an earful from a lot of people out there, man. A lot of people who listen to the show. I even had one friend who told his friends and his coworkers about the show, and they just listened to the latest episode, and a lot of them got defensive. And you know what? I embrace that. I like to have intellectual conversations. I like to have mind stimulated conversations. But if you're going to get defensive, and we're going to talk about this later because I think defensiveness kills relationships too. But if you're going to get defensive and you're going to turn around and just spew, I don't do that, so that's not true type of thing, then we can't have a conversation. I have no ears for you. I want to have stimulating conversation. And it doesn't have to be, we can disagree at the end of the day. You can go, you know what, you're right, or hey, no, you're wrong, or hey, I disagree with you. But at the end of the day, we had a fruitful, stimulating intellectual conversation or debate. That's what I want. I live for those. I live for those debates. It's nothing like a genuine, good debate. And it just brings something out of you, especially when it's productive. Last episode, and I do apologize if I say last week, everybody. We did take the week off. And I'm just so used to saying last week. But last episode, wow, we talked about toxic relationships. We talked about the victim mentality and constantly blaming your past relationships on all of your exes. They didn't work out because it was all of your ex's fault. And we talked about cheating to a smaller extent, but we talked about cheating. And my buddy Ryan, who is huge supporter of the show, shout out to Ryan. Thank you so much for tuning in. Thanks for your constructive feedback too. Ryan is the type of friend that you want. He won't just say you're doing a good job just to see you smile. He'll tell you where you're doing a good job, but where you need to improve at. So Ryan's a good guy. Shout out to Ryan. Ryan said to me, "Hey man, I got a bone to pick with you." I said, "Okay, let's do it. Let's have this discussion. Let's have this debate." And he keyed in on a topic that I talked about last week where we spoke about cheating. And I made a comment that if you feel like you have to go outside of your relationship, like you feel like it's necessary, and I'm not talking about the coincidental cheating. And before you disagree with me, there is a thing, such thing. So you have, cheating where you find yourself in a situation where you shouldn't be in, and it just happens. Of course, you have lustful and gluttonous cheating where you just want more of what you're already getting, but you're not getting enough of it. Then you have that compulsive cheating where some people just they can't be faithful and truthful to the person that they're with, so they just got to go out and cheat, right? Now we're talking about the type of cheating where you feel like you have to go outside of your relationship to get something that you feel like you currently don't have in your relationship. And Ryan attacked that point. Ryan said that, hey, what about the person? And this is Ryan playing devil's advocate, which I really like. I think it says a lot about a person who can argue a point that they don't necessarily agree with. They just kind of like want to see where your thought process is, where you're thinking. And I like that because sometimes I might come up and I might agree with you, but I might argue, I might play devil's advocate and argue the opposite point just to, see if just test your resolve a little bit. So Ryan's like, hey, what about the person who they're getting 90% of the things in their relationship already? The person that they're, and he was speaking from a male's perspective, so I'm going, a straight male's perspective. So I'm going to speak from that perspective just to stay true to Ryan's argument. So Ryan was like, what if you're with a young lady who's a hard worker? She makes a good income, or she's in school, she's doing well in school, she has her future planned out, she's great with finances, she's great with, intimacy, she's great with in the bedroom, she's, she does little things like, maybe she makes you a shake in the morning to replace your breakfast. Maybe she diets with you. Maybe she does things for you and with you that you do like and you do appreciate, but you're not getting one thing. And last episode's example, I gave the example of I knew somebody who, or I still know them. I know somebody who is into relationships because in one of the relationships that he's in, the young lady doesn't cook for him. Like she doesn't, and more specifically, she doesn't want to cook for him. She doesn't cook for him. She doesn't want to cook for him. So that's deep. And he decided to go outside of that and get into another relationship with someone who does want to cook for him, who enjoys cooking for him. And Ryan's argument was, well, hey, what if the first young lady that he was in a relationship does everything else, does the things that we talked about earlier, spends the quality time, has the interest that he has, but she just doesn't cook? Are you willing to sell the house for the car? Are you willing to just put at risk a really good relationship just because you're not getting something in that relationship, so you go outside the relationship to get it? And I told Ryan, that's a really good point. That's something to consider. Think about that. Think about the relationships you have. Think about the personal relationships that you have. When do you talk to another friend because, friend B can supply something that friend A can't? When do you do that? And, when do you talk to family member B because family member A can't provide what you're looking for? How many times do you call a friend up and you just want to vent? You don't want advice. You don't want your friend to fix it. You just want to cry, whine, and complain about something, and then you feel better afterwards. So you pick and choose who you go to for what, right? So what does that say about that person? And I told Ryan, like, well, hey, look, it boils down to communication, which is really important. Communication is so important, and I think it's constantly overlooked. If you're not willing to have a conversation, if you're not willing to have a conversation with the person that you're in a relationship with and express what you require. Now, there's a thing called compromise. It's like, hey, I know I used to go out with the guys every Friday night, but you want to spend time with me Friday night. So how about we compromise and I spend 2 nights out with the 2 Friday nights a month out with the guys, and I spend 2 Friday nights with you. That's compromise. Like, hey, I still get to do what I want to do, but I'm making time for you too because you're important to me, and quality time is important to you. So let's just make that work, right? There's compromise, but then there's also like things that people just sacrifice for no reason due to lack of communication. If you require certain things, if you require quality time, if you require gifts and presents, if you require intimacy, if you require words of affirmation, honey, sweetie, cupcake, I love you, I appreciate you, I'm so glad I'm with you. If you require things like that, not only do you need to find somebody who doesn't think that it's absurd to do that for you need to communicate that. You need to tell the person, like, hey, this is what I require. How many of you out there feel like you know yourself well enough to know what you want? If you find yourself getting upset with somebody and your first thought in your head is they should know this, and you didn't even tell them to have a conversation about it, that's what I'm talking about. Anyone who goes that route, anyone, oh, you should know this, or they should know this, or he or she should know this, you got to get away from that. No one is a mind reader. You can't just expect someone to be inside your head all the time. I did a little experiment where I asked 10 people. I asked 10 people what the most important thing in a relationship is to them. And I wanted to prove a point, so I stayed within my age group. And I asked, hey, what is the most important thing? I've got honesty. Actually, I wrote everything down. So let's break everything down. So 4 people here said honesty or some form of it. Truthful. I'm grouping faithfulness into honesty, right? So 4 people said honesty is the most important thing. 2 people said a sense of humor. They said if you can't laugh in a relationship, then there's no point in being in a in a relationship with that person because that person isn't going to make you happy. Well, first of all, no one can make you happy, but I get their point. You don't want to be around a grouch all the time, right? And then everybody else, so your 4 6, the rest of the four people said goal driven or some form of it. They said, hey, I want my person to be goal driven. They can't be a bum. They can't be lazy, right? They gotta be a hard worker. They have to have growth in their career. They have to find a career, and they don't even care where they work at. Like, hey, you can be at the lowest of the low in your particular job, as long as you have goals and aspirations to. How many of us know somebody who would rather get a second job to make more money versus working their tail off in their current job to get more money at their current job, to make their current job to go from a job a career? And obviously you got to do what you got to do. I'm not attacking anybody in particular, but there's some people out there who are just lazy, who are just like, hey, you know what, look, I'd rather get a second job and be getting paid this amount of money at my main job and be getting paid this amount of money at my other job, working 20 hours a week at both jobs. So now I'm getting 40 hours a week total, but 20 split down, 40 split down the middle, versus working your tail off at your current job and getting into a position where you can work full time and work 40 hours at your main job. That's the rest, those other four people, that's what they were like, hey, I want somebody who's goal driven. I want somebody who's not in school because their parents told them to go to school. I want somebody who is not just going to school just to say that they go to school, and then get a degree and just, okay, I got a degree. I want somebody who's goal driven, who has a plan. And if their plan doesn't work out, if it doesn't work out, it's okay. It's okay. You don't need your plan to work out. You need to have a plan. And if your plan doesn't work out, okay, then you move on. Okay, how can I perfect this plan? How can I tweak this plan? Or maybe I need another plan. But you won't know that until you put that plan to action. You won't know that until you have a plan. Those are the people, like, I want goal oriented, and I respect all of those comments, right? But not a single person said communication. How powerful is that? That's very interesting to me. Not to say that these other things aren't important, but one can make an argument that in order to be honest and truthful and faithful, in order to have a sense of humor, in order to be goal driven, you have to have communication. You can't just expect the other person to notice, or worse yet, how many of us get into a relationship hoping that we're compatible? Now, there's certain things you're not just going to know, right? You don't know this person snores until you're in a situation where you're both sleeping together, literally sleeping together. You don't know that this person leaves their, I don't know, their toenail clippings everywhere until you're in a situation with them where they do that. You don't know that this person doesn't like grape jelly. If you don't like grape jelly, you're an alien, first of all. But if you don't know this because you need to get the time to know this person, but how many of us get into a relationship where they just hope, I hope we're compatible. I hope this works out. I hope. You're not taking responsibility. I tell you what type of person that's for. That's for the person who, and if I hurt you guys' feelings, so be it. I mean, I don't want to lie to you guys. I don't want to sugarcoat anything. And somebody listening to this might need to hear this. If you're hopeful in a relationship in the sense that you're hoping things work out, you're hoping you're compatible, you're hoping you have similar interests, that's for the type of person that after the relationship ends, they can blame it on everything but themselves. They can sit there and go, oh, he or she didn't show me enough attention. I was hoping that they would, but they didn't. And, that's on them. I got to find somebody who can show me attention. Or, she didn't cook. She doesn't know how to cook. She barely know how to boil a pot of water. So, you know, I had to leave her. I got to find somebody. How about you take the time to get to know the person? And how about you accept some responsibility? Communication is so important. And there are a lot of people out there who don't want to accept responsibility for being in the type of relationship or even getting to that point. So they want to blame everything. I heard this talk about communication. I heard this story about Prince, the late great Prince, who used to check in like Prince, the mogul, the superstar, used to check in with his wife. Hey, the show just got done. I'm in my hotel room now. There's a few ways to look at that. I know a lot of people out there are going to look at that like, oh, Prince even did it. Prince even humbled himself. There's another angle to look at that. I mean, you could look at it like from fear too. There's a phrase out there that says, happy wife, happy life. And it's a joke, but it has some truth to it. And the sad part about it is there are a lot of, I know there's going to be a lot of old heads out there that they're going to listen to this and just shake their head at what I'm about to say. But so be it. Chalk it up to me being young. The phrase happy wife, happy life, at its core, it's sad because it's saying as long as I make her happy, I'll be okay. As long as she just needs to be happy. Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter if I'm happy. Doesn't matter if I'm satisfied. Doesn't matter if I'm getting the things that I need to get. If she's happy, I'm happy. And I think that's BS. If your relationship, if your happiness is totally, and I don't mean the type of like romantic cutesy stuff, like you're happy because you got her, you took her on a vacation, you took her on a trip, and she's happy, so you're happy that she's happy. That's different. But if it's a, let me go home and do this, or let me go out and do this, so I don't have to hear her mouth. And if she's happy, I'm happy. No, that means you're not enjoying your relationship. You're tolerating your relationship. How many of us know someone or have been in a relationship where you just tolerated it? You're like, well, can't do any better. Yeah, I can't. It's the best I can do right now. So you just tolerate it. Hey, to each his own. But let me tell you, sis. Let me tell you, brother. That is not the relationship you want to be in. Trust me. You don't have moments like that. You don't have moments where you just. That's a part of a relationship, but that shouldn't be the relationship. When I heard that story about Prince, it was just so shocking to me. It was crazy to me. I'm like, Prince, this guy, and it just made me like how powerful fear can be. Fear is so powerful. Fear makes you change. It does. And that's essential too. I mean, talk about tolerating things and being complacent. You gotta put that fear into your partner to let them know that if things don't get better or at least change, if there is no growth, then there's a consequence to that, regardless of what that consequence is. But you need to have that. You need to have that talk. Fear is so powerful. Fear is a hell of a motivator. See, that's the problem. I think a lot of people remained in a relationship because they're complacent and the person's like, hey, look, they're giving me what I need. I'm fine. No, they're giving you what you want. You got to take a look at like, okay, want versus need. And that boils down to communication. It really boils down to communication. What's important to you? What are you doing differently? I was having a conversation with a listener, and she said, she was trying to argue with someone, and they wouldn't argue with her, and he called her out on it, I was like, if you want me to argue, I'm just not going to argue with you. She got mad, but after a while, she took a step back and just looked. It's like, you know what? Wow, why do I like to do that? And I respect her so much for telling me that, and I respect her so much for doing that. Just taking a step back and looking in the mirror, like, why? If you're not asking yourself why on a daily basis, what are you doing? What are you doing? You need to be asking yourself why. Why and how? And that story really stood out to me because she took a step back and looked at herself and her habits and really started to question them. And how many of us do that? How many of us need to do that? And we look at what are we doing differently? I had a conversation with my buddy Charles, who just got out of a relationship, and he shared some pretty good thoughts about that relationship. And I told him I wasn't going to put too much of his business out there, so I'll just leave it at that. But just complacency within the relationship and just self-awareness of understanding what you're willing to do and what you're not willing to do in a relationship. And it just boils down to like, hey, what are you doing differently, right? And I told Charles I had a very, very, very heart to heart, very genuine conversation with him. I told him, hey, look, man, you got to stop dating your friends' friends. That's really boy. Meet somebody new. Meet somebody outside of the circle. Meet somebody who is going to change it up and switch it up. If you keep dating friends of friends, and I understand sometimes like, hey, it just works out that way. But if you're getting into a relationship with somebody out of coincidence versus getting into a relationship with somebody intentionally, that could emphasis on could be a foundation for failure. What are you doing differently? This weekend, Charles and I are going to visit a local bookstore and go out and hit the town and just see if we can change up the routine and see if I can introduce him to a new routine. Now, I'm not trying to introduce him to some new young ladies, just a new routine because you can't meet new people if you have the same routine. How many of us wake up, we if we have kids, we deal with the kids. If we don't, then, we have our little moments before work. We go to work, we go to school, we do what we have to do at work, we do what we have to do at school. We pick the kids up if we need to. If we don't need to, we go home. We chill at home. Well, how are you going to meet your next boyfriend? How are you going to meet your next girlfriend? You have the same habit, the same routine. How many of us get frustrated when something outside of the normal happens? You're on your way to work, there's a traffic jam, you got to take a different way. You're catching a bus or a train, and that bus or train is suspended. You're, you know, going to your local coffee shop to get your breakfast in the morning, and they're closed. You get angry, right? You get irritated, or at least annoyed. It snows. We just had some really bad snow here in Philly, and I imagine this snow messed up a lot of people's routine, whether it be work, whether it be school, whether it be the kids. The kids got to stay home from school. Now you got to call out from work, or you can't, or your flight got canceled, right? This normal routine stuff, this normal routine, and it gets interrupted, and you get angry, right? How many of us decide to take a new way to work one day? Maybe you walk down a different street. Maybe you take a different way to work and you discover something new. Just think about that, how pleasant that is, and how your eyes perk up. Oh, hey, I didn't know this cafe was here. Oh, I didn't know this bookstore was here. Oh, I didn't know this food place was here. And then now you have a new routine. Oh, I'm gonna check that place out. And then before you know it, it's a part of your routine. Your routine wasn't always the same. It changed. It had to. And that's how you discover new things. And the same thing has to happen with your dating life. You're going to meet the same people for the most part, see the same faces, and have the same conversations with the same people you either can't get with, don't want to be with, and you're going to go home and cry and boo-hoo to your friends or to yourself about how you're single. Well, what are you going to do about it? I had a heart to heart with Charles about that, and I said, "Hey, look, Chuck, you got to change your routine up, man." So me and Charles are going to change up the routine just to see what we can do. I challenge all of you, change up the routine. Email me. I'll talk if you'll listen at hotmail.com or on Twitter at ITIYL underscore ITIYL on Twitter, and tell me, what would you like to change about your routine? Why do you feel like you can't change your routine? Tell me that. Why do you feel like it has to be the same? Why do you feel like, oh, I'm never going to find anybody? Why do you feel like, oh, that won't work? That's another problem, to try to figure out, not things, figure out a way to make it work. Don't, I'm surrounded by too many people who think about why something won't work. Okay, if you can't you can't let that determine your routine because you can't control it. If something won't work by something that you have no control over. Okay, so I can't get to work because it's going to snow. Well, think about how can you get to work if it does snow? Or I'm going to be hot this summer because I don't have an air conditioner. Well, what can you do to cool yourself down? Don't think about the negative. Don't think about why you can't do something. And I'm not saying live in a fantasy land. Don't live in a fantasy land. Don't live in a fantasy world. Try to think about uh, just be realistic. If there's nothing but negativity, if you're looking at like why you can't do something, by that same logic, you have to say, okay, if there's reasons that you can list as to why you can't do something, then by that same logic, there's reasons that you can list of why you can do something. And that's important. What else is important? Charles was talking about acceptance versus settling. And we had a really deep conversation about that on things that you just accept about your partner, whoever you're in a relationship with, and you accept there are certain things that they just do because that's who they are at the moment. And I emphasize at the moment because growth should happen. But there's also settling. Like, hey, I know I'm not going to get this, and we're going to settle. And Charles really wanted me to talk about that, and I'm just going to dive into that a little bit. And I would love to hear you guys' take on it. Again, it's I'll talk if you'll listen at hotmail.com or ITIYL underscore ITIYL on Twitter. But that's pretty important. Acceptance versus settling, right? You can accept that your partner is going to eat a certain way, right? You can accept that about them. Like that's just the way that they eat. You can accept that your partner has hobbies. They're going to have certain hobbies. They're always going to be a gamer. They're always going to be someone who's really into books and reads a lot. They're always going to be an outdoorsy person. That's acceptance. Settling is, hey, I wanted this, but I can't get that, so I'll just deal with what I have. That's settling. That's settling. I wanted a black stove, but they only have charcoal, so I guess I'll get charcoal. That's settling. So in terms of a relationship is I wanted somebody who has a career and is passionate about their career, but this person has two jobs and they work really hard. So I'll deal. That's settling. And it's really important where you have to put yourself in a unique position where it's a thin line. It's a thin line. And I don't think you should ever settle. I think you should compromise. I think you should have acceptance about certain things, but you should never settle. And that always comes back to bite you in the butt. How many of you had like settled in a relationship where you just say, okay, I'll just deal with something, I'll just tolerate something, and it came back and bit you in the butt? How many of us dealt with that? How many of us had something like that before? If there's a there are there's a lot of self-reflection that goes into settling. And here's what I mean by that. You have to really take a long look at yourself and what you actually want. Because a lot of people like the idea of things. Hell, even a relationship. Some people just want companionship. How many of us just want somebody to lay with on the couch just to watch a movie? Or how many of us just want that one person to go to Dave and Buster's with us? How many of us just want that one person to go to that dive bar that you always wanted to go to? How many of us wanted somebody who just wanted to go, you know, on a walk, even something simple like a walk? You just want companionship. You don't want a relationship. How many of us like we found ourselves or we know somebody who has been in a situation where you're like, you know what, I really enjoy this person's company. I really like being around them. Then you get in a relationship with them and you go, what the hell was I doing? That's when you like the idea of something instead of just being able to break everything down. Like, hey, you know what? I just like this person for, sexual things, or hey, I just like this person for conversation. You got to be honest with yourself. You do. Because if you sit there and go, you know what? I really like this person because they can cook, you're lying to yourself. You are lying to yourself. What are you doing? Hey, you know what? This person is talk about settling. When you go in like, hey, this person, you know what? They're working, they got a job. So what if they don't have their own place? They got a job. I'll deal. That's settling. Whenever settling, in my opinion, is synonymous with dealing with something, tolerating something to a degree. Not entirely, but to a degree. And that's really important. I'm really thankful. Shout out to Charles for bringing that up. I'm really thankful for that topic. And it just goes to show you guys, like I do listen. Like when you guys email in, when you call me, when you text me, for those of you who have my number, when you call me, when you text me, when you email in, I listen, and with you guys' permission, I bring it up on the show. And the ultimate goal is just to hear other people's feedback. I can't tell you the joy that I feel when I have people come up to me and say, "Hey, the story that you told about this," and they just want more information or they just want more clarity, or even if they come at me with shock, like, "Wow, did that really happen?" That is so cool to me. That is so cool to me. And I really look forward to the interaction, a personal interaction. Interaction is really important. It just really helps fuel certain things. And speaking of interaction, I had a conversation with another listener about gender roles. That's another topic we talked about last week. We were talking about gender roles and if they exist and if they don't exist, and how men and women should be a little bit more equal. There are certain things that are ingrained in our culture and in tradition that people will just not give up. How many women out there, you know, question to you guys? I'll talk if you'll listen at hotmail.com if you don't want to, or if you can't, have the conversation face to face. How many of you think there's something wrong with a woman proposing to a man? How many of you think that that's something a man should do? If you have that mindset, if you have that mindset about anything, whether it be proposing, whether it be paying on a first date, whether it be fixing the plumbing, if you say, "Oh, that's a man's job," then you believe in gender roles, and you can't deny that. See, a lot of people will sit here and go, I don't believe in gender roles if it's a negative connotation associated with it. Like, for example, uh, there are some women out there who don't like gender roles that make the women appear to be weak or insufficient. They don't like that. But you can't have your cake and eat it too. You got to look at it like, okay, you can't say gender roles don't exist if you're the one that make. Let's say in a relationship, you're a woman and you make more money. Or let's say you're in a relationship and you're the man and you take care of the kids. You're a stay-at-home husband, right? And your whole argument, oh, gender roles don't exist because you can't say women are natural caregivers because I'm a stay-at-home husband and my wife is the career has the career and I stay at home and take care of the kids. You can't use that argument if you genuinely believe. To that guy who says that, I'll ask who proposed. Did you? And I'll just watch the smack face. And I might even laugh and point too. Because you can't have your cake and eat it too. You can't sit here and say there aren't such things as gender roles. Well, you know what? A man should propose to a woman. There are women out there who think they shouldn't pay for the first date. How crazy is that? I think that's crazy. I know there are a lot of traditionalists, a lot of old heads, especially. Just because you were raised, a message to the old heads, okay? Just because you were raised a certain way does not mean it was right. It just means that that's the way it was. If you only have Oreos in your cabinet, they don't mean there's no such thing as a Chips Ahoy cookie. It just means that you only have Oreos. Old heads crack me up, man. Old heads to sit here and say, back in my day, this is the way it was. Well, that's because that's the way it was. It's not like that anymore. We have iTunes now. We don't need your 8 track. So, you know, a lot of old heads are probably going to chew me up for this, but again, there's women out there who think a woman shouldn't pay for the first date. I understand that egos are set up differently. We talked about this before. If you're a listener of the show, you remember the conversation. Egos are set up differently, right? So sometimes men, even if a woman came at me and approached me and wanted to take me out on a date, I would still feel like I have to pay. Not because that's something a man should do, but because that's what helps me feel like a man. That helps me feel in control. I like to be in control of that moment. Plus, it's just pretty badass. One time I pulled this real badass move. I regretted it later, but she does. She didn't know that. Um, she does. She still doesn't know that. There was one time I took a young lady out to Applebee's because I was a teenager and I was balling, and that's what you do. You take them to a five-star restaurant by the name of Applebee's. And I took her out to Applebee's, and I was flossing on them. And after when we got done our appetizers and our one entree and our two desserts, I don't know where I heard this from. I don't know if I like read this or I saw like a video or it was like in a movie or something. Whatever. I'm a teenager. Don't judge me. I saw that like, hey, if when a server comes out and places the bill in on the table, before they walk off, you pick it up, you hand them your credit card, you say, here you go. You don't even look at it. You're such a badass. It really impresses the woman. They go, oh snap, he didn't even look at the bill. So first of all, here's what I learned about that. First of all, she didn't even notice. She didn't even notice. Second of all, the type of woman that you want to impress is the woman who's not even going to care about that. The woman who's impressed by that action is a woman you don't want to be with. Trust me. Learned that the hard way. But point being is I felt like I had to pay. I feel like I have to pay. I like being in control of the moment, right? But here's the thing. I don't think that's a gender thing. I think that that's just a Tim thing. I know that about myself. There's certain things I feel that a man should do. For example, I feel like the man should be the protector. Unless you're in a unique relationship. You're in a relationship with Ronda Rousey or something, you know, and Ronda Rousey obviously is she could take care of herself and you. She's the protector. But I think, that's that's the exception to the rule. Generally speaking, I think the man should be the protector. I I think the man should be the man should know where the goal what the goal is. The woman should help you get there. But that's just my belief. I'm not saying that's right or wrong. If someone came up to me and said I disagree with that, I would say okay. I wouldn't argue like, oh no, that's just the way it is. Gender, gender, gender. But to sit there and ignore that there's certain things that we all believe that a man should just do, I think you're just naive. Again, there's women out there. I want to have a conversation. I'm gonna pick you guys' brain this week for the listeners of the show that I see on a daily basis, and you know who you are, because some of you I don't see on a daily basis, and you're limited to just texting or calling or emailing. And I know a lot of you want to email, but you're not in a position where you can email. But for the listeners that I see on a daily basis, you know who you are. I'm gonna ask you, and if I forget when you see me, remind me. If you're a woman, to the women listeners out there, do you believe that a man should pay for their first date? That's not something a woman should do, regardless of how that first date happened. I want to hear your thoughts. You might change my mind. You might change my mind and shut me up, which I doubt. But I really want to hear you. I want to hear your thoughts. I want to hear what your opinions on that is. Do you feel like a woman should propose if it gets to that point? Who should make the most money? Oh, see, and if you think, oh, it doesn't matter, a woman can be the financial provider in the relationship, or be the one in the relationship that makes the most money. But you sit here and go, oh no, a man has to propose. There's conflicting trains of thought there that I really need to figure out. Because not saying that the man should be the financial provider, but if you're going to sit here and say gender roles don't exist in one area and say that they do in another, we got to find some common ground. Anybody can be in the kitchen and cook. You're absolutely right. But to sit here and say a woman can't propose or a woman shouldn't propose, you gotta do some self reflection there. One last point I want to make before I go, guys, is I really want to drive home the point that I'm looking forward to you disagreeing. I'm really looking forward to the different perspective. I'm looking forward to that person who has a different train of thought. I'm looking forward to that person who is like, you know what, Tim, I disagree, and here's why. I'm looking forward to that. I really am. And I also have a really special treat for you guys coming soon. I don't want to put a timestamp on it yet, but it's coming soon. It's coming soon, and I'm really excited about this component. It just goes to show you, like, the show's evolving. It's getting to that point. I really want to drive home the point that I can't have the show without you guys. There's no such thing as there's topics that I can get excited about, and I'm going to say, hey, it's a good topic because that's the only way I really know how to describe it. But there's no such thing as a good topic or a bad topic. There are only topics, and there's only an audience who's willing to listen to it. So as long as you guys keep listening, I'll keep talking. And keep them coming. Keep the feedback coming. Keep the constructive criticism coming, guys. Keep the thoughts coming in. And feel free. I mean, look, if you guys have your own podcast, you have your own YouTube channel, you got something going on a blog, let me know. Not only will I shout it out on the show, I'll tune in. I'll listen. I'll read. I'll watch. Let me know. I'm all about support. We're one big community. In the meantime, guys, feel free to catch up on all of the episodes of I'll Talk If You'll Listen. Again, we're coming to Google Play very, very soon. In fact, I'm going to look into it after the recording of this episode and go through that process so that way you have another outlet. And that way you have another way to share it with your friends and family. And keep it coming, guys. I really appreciate it. I really do. Every week, week in and week out, you guys sticking by me and staying strong. In the meantime, everyone, I'll keep talking if you'll listen. Take care.